All right, it looks like we are live. So we'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you all and also thank you for joining. We'll give everyone a second just to get logged on. I see the participant numbers are rolling in. So we'll give everyone a minute to do that and then we'll officially get started.
Grab your coffee, grab your popcorn.
Your afternoon coffee. I already have mine, Karen.
All right. We've got a great panel of educators today. It's really exciting. All right, we've got someone from Canada joining.
Nice.
Yeah, please put your whereabouts in the chat and let us know where you're joining from, because our panel is coming from all over the United States as well.
Hey, Dr. Gore. I see some familiar names. So good to see that. It's always exciting when we see someone we know joining.
Definitely.
All over the country, Pennsylvania, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, thank you for joining to hear firsthand from CKLA administrators and CKLA classroom teachers to really learn more about how CKLA has impacted or turned their reading scores around. And that's what we all want at the end of the day, is to do what's best for kids, to set them up on the path for success, because reading is a skill that we're going to need for the rest of our lives. And so we'll actually start by introducing ourselves, and I'll kick us off. My name is Megan Mobear, and I am a former elementary teacher from Louisiana. The majority of my time in the classroom was actually spent with K-2 students, and these are those foundational years that are extremely impactful on students' reading success in later years. And it's really through my experience with becoming a CKLA teacher in the classroom that I actually got to see the science of reading come to life as I implemented CKLA. And also it brought me onto my journey with Amplify, which has given me the opportunity to work with educators from different parts of the country who, like myself, put the science of reading into action through utilizing CKLA. And now I work as a literacy curriculum specialist with Karen. And we are always so excited to join everyone on calls because it gives us that opportunity to share our passion for effective literacy instruction.
Thanks, Megan. That was great. And I had the experience of meeting people like Megan in the classroom, working with CKLA, and that's how I became so passionate about it as well. I was an elementary and middle school English language arts teacher, had experience with reading recovery, so my background covers the gamut as well. But working with CKLA and seeing it in action and seeing the impact that it has on students really was phenomenal. And that's what I've been doing, working with teachers in this PD world and working with educators that are on our call today, supporting them in implementing CKLA for the past 6.5 years. So now we want to hear from the people you came to hear from today. So let's start with Liza.
Hi, I'm Lisa Bailey, and I am, that's okay, my name's really hard to say, it's okay. I teach first grade at Rock Springs Elementary in Sullivan County, and this is my 5th year of implementing CKLA. I absolutely love it, and I can't wait to share my experience with you all today.
Great. Brittany.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brittany Bills. I am a curriculum coordinator for Grand Island Public Schools in Nebraska. We are actually in our first year implementing CKLA. And so I'm excited to share with you our journey in the science of teaching reading and moving away from a guided reading model to a structured literacy model. So welcome.
Thanks, Brittany. And let's hear from Robin.
Hello, honored to be here. Robin McClellan. I'm Sullivan County Schools in Northeast Tennessee, Rural School District. We are in year 5 of implementing CKLA, but year 1 of implementing Amplify CKLA. But I would just say that beginning from the beginning, Amplify has been our partner and cheering us on. So I'm supervisor of elementary education, 11 elementary schools.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robin. And Shyla, last but not least.
Hello, my name is Shyla Johnson. I am a first grade teacher from Caddo Parish, Louisiana, and I am very excited to share with you how implementing CKLA has transformed my literacy instruction. This is my 3rd year implementing Amplify CKLA.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing that. We're excited to hear from you. Now we want to hear who's joining us from out in the field. And so we only have a few options today. We really just want to hear if you're already implementing CKLA or you've come to hear from these wonderful educators who are going to share their experiences. So if you want to fill out our poll question, if you can't find the poll question, you can always put that in the chat too.
Absolutely. I always love seeing who's joining, and we'll go ahead and share those results. We have the majority of our participants who've shown up today as eager beavers, ready to learn more about CKLA. And then it looks like we have some CKLA educators as well. I love that we have a caregiver or a parent on the call. And for everyone else joining, thank you for being here.
All right. So what we're going to do today is focus on a few broad topics. Really that we're going to start, Megan and I are going to share a little bit about our literacy suite, and then talk about the journey to high quality instructional materials with our partners here. Their results are important to you and to us, as well as some of the remote experiences, what's been happening in this hybrid and remote world that we're in right now, and how they've met those challenges. We definitely want to hear from you and answer your questions for our panelists. So please share those. We'll be taking those really at the end. We may be able to intersperse them throughout, but at the end, we'll definitely leave time for your questions. We also are going to share some resources at the end for you to kind of get more information about the science of reading, as our partners are going to share today on what they did for their journey, as well as a free pilot in Amplify Reading, and another little surprise that we've just added that you'll have to wait till the end to hear about.
Absolutely. So stay tuned. But we'll start here. When we think about the power of an effective literacy program, it's not just about assessment or core instruction or supplemental resources working in silo or isolation. There's really tremendous power in them aligning to one another. And so Amplify really takes pride in our literacy suite because that's exactly what our literacy programs do. And they're all grounded in the science of reading. And today's focus is going to be our core program, but before I move on to that, and Karen's going to kind of give you a deeper overview of that. Oftentimes when districts turn to us, the conversation begins with, we have an intervention problem. And so one thing I want to hit on is just typically, or what we believe is that when you have an intervention problem, it's really a core instruction problem. And so we're really excited to share and hear from these educators, because they're through implementing CKLA, our core instruction program, we'll hear how they really turn their results around.
And so, as Megan mentioned, we're really focused today on CKLA, but because our partners do utilize some of our other resources, and we're going to talk about that, we really kind of wanted to level set here and make sure everyone was on the same page. And so, the data drives instruction, right? So that is where our M-Class assessment comes in. It's a universal screener with dyslexia screening measures that really helps drive that instruction, as well as support based on that data. And our Amplify Reading supplemental tool aligns to the scope and sequence of CKLA. And so we really want people to understand that when our students are getting those extra at-bats and practice with those skills and building vocabulary and learning about new knowledge, new topics in our e-reader, that it does align with what's happening in CKLA. And that M-Class assessment also drives that. And so it's all tied to the science of reading. And at the end of our visit today, as I shared, we're going to talk about a little bit about the Amplify Reading Free Pilot and another wonderful tool that I think you'll really enjoy hearing about.
Absolutely. So now we're going to turn it over to our panelists, and I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen here so we can get a better view of them. And we'll actually start off with a question as geared towards administrators. And so Brittany and Robin, really, I'm going to turn this over to you to kick it off. Before we do that, I just want to remind everyone that Q&A button at the bottom of the screen as you come up with questions. You can put them in the Q&A, click on the Q&A icon and put them there. We'll revisit those at the end. And then if there's questions that can be answered, someone on the call will answer them. But we definitely want to make time for those questions as well. So let's get started. So when we think about implementing CKLA, CKLA is a different program. And so if teachers aren't prepared to implement something different, we really have to look into that. But the first part of this process is knowing where to start, right? How did you even arrive at CKLA? And so Brittany and Robin, I'm going to turn this question over to you guys, and what kind of directed you to Amplify CKLA, and like what you were, what type of reading instruction your teachers were using before that, and then how you arrived at the CKLA journey. So I'll go to Robin first.
Okay, we always try to do that respectful pause because I, don't want to jump in, right, Brittany? So we began with the State of the Union that about a third of our kids are reading on grade level by third grade. And when we looked at the trajectory when they left us out of English 2 and English 3, it was still the same stark reality. So we had to do something. So I call it a moral imperative. We could not sit on laurels and accept that anymore. So we basically knew that we did not have the foundation of the high quality materials because our teachers are amazing rock stars, magic makers, but they didn't have the footers poured on the house. So we had to come to the table. So we brought 3 curricula together that were all green on ed reports. And I brought in 24 teachers to the table. We started with 3 pilot schools, and I said, here you go. Let's just start digging in. And so we started having that conversation of we are missing, like, first of all, we don't even know about building background knowledge. I didn't either, 25 years in. And we thought we were doing foundational skills instruction right and well, but we had no plan. It was willy-nilly. So they looked at these 2 strands, and I said, guys, do you want to start with the knowledge building? We kind of know a little bit about phonics instruction. And they're like, nope, if we're going to do it, we're going all in. We're doing both strands. It took a lot of courage. But CKLA is what they chose as what they believed to be the strongest curricula. We had no money. So they were all 3 open source curricula. And we said, there's no excuses. If I have to go make copies on Saturdays and ask forgiveness for doing it on Easter Sunday, whatever it takes. And that's what we did. So we came together. We said, we're going to do this with few resources, but we're all in, and we're going to use the power of our teachers to get the work done.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that you guys took that leap of faith without funding and really committed yourself to providing high quality instructional materials in the best way that you could through really putting that instruction into action. So thank you, Robin. And Brittany, what about you guys?
Yeah, so I'm actually really new to our district as a curriculum coordinator. I'm just 2.5 years in to our position, or to my position. And my first year here, so we had adopted Wonders about 6 years ago. And, I was really just kind of getting my feet wet, really trying to understand, this resource because I wasn't familiar with it, how it taught reading to students, getting into classrooms, and quickly came to realize the large gaps that Wonders had in regard to teaching early literacy specifically. And a little bit about our district. We have 14 elementary schools. We're about 67% free and reduced lunch, and we have a 17% EL population. And so really explicit systematic instruction is absolutely critical for the students in our district, right? And so I really just honestly started with our instructional coaches. We're fortunate enough that we have instructional coaches at every single one of our buildings, and started taking them to different professional developments. Our State Department of Ed actually has Materials Matters initiative that they have going, and that's actually when we first got introduced to CKLA. It was presented to us as an open source, the first edition as open source for student achievement partners. And we started kind of dabbling with that open source piece a little bit, and started thinking about how we could maybe like supplement or like beef up our early literacy piece for K-1-2. The other thing we started doing in our district, we actually offer letters, language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, professional development to all of our teachers. And so we have been professionally developing our teachers in the science of teaching reading. We felt like it was really important for our teachers to understand these resources and understand why the resources are teaching reading the way that they do. And CKLA, honestly, by the time we started piloting last year, was it such an easy sell for our teachers because they had that professional knowledge. It was an easy decision. I mean, they literally saw everything that they were learning about in their professional development come to life in their materials, and they felt like they had the power now to teach their students how to read in ways that they never had before.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because right now there is this huge science of reading or the science of teaching reading momentum that's sweeping across the country, and educators are embracing this call to action and excited to do it. But Robin, I want to go back to you here because you said this was 5 years ago that you said, here are these 3 curricula. I've looked on ed reports. We don't have any money, guys. We're going to have to really print out some stuff here. When your teachers originally looked at CKLA, and I was an open source user originally as well. I know initially when I looked at it, it was like, this isn't anything pretty as far as aesthetically appealing. And also, why is it structured this way? And so I guess what I want to learn more about or hear from you is, you said it was a pilot? And so how many pilot teachers did you guys have?
We had 3 schools and we had a total of, let me think a minute. I think we had a total of K-2, 24 pilot teachers. That's who we brought to the table. I believe that's close.
And so when they looked at it though, and what was that initial reaction like?
Well, it is not fluffy and pretty in version 1, but we weren't to the point that we cared about that. So we're like stark reality, and we knew nothing about science of reading. So we came to the table with a sense of urgency that we're going to have to learn as we go. And I didn't know about it either. And I've been in the field a long time. So I think they were to the point like we're exhausted from planning and sourcing and doing stuff that's proving to be not effective, even though we want what's best for kids. So they didn't really get caught up in that in the beginning. Now, our teachers do want things to be visually appealing, but they just took the clips and the screenshots and built their own PowerPoints from scratch on their own time that did not lose fidelity. So like they started to make things better for kids that were student facing materials without losing, diluting, changing anything at all. So they took what was given in the train tracks and made it what's best for kids with no money. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Absolutely. So that's a really good point, right? You guys were using that free version, and you're putting the science of reading into action without even knowing really what you're doing, right? And I had that experience. So when I say I kind of have that backwards approach, that's exactly what happened. And so I can definitely relate to that. But Liza, were you on did you pilot, or was that the following year that you started implementing CKLA?
No, I was part of the pilot team. So it was very interesting. I remember we came in, maybe like a week before school started, Robin, or was it 2 weeks? I can't remember. It was right before. Of course, you're still kind of in summer mode and you're like, getting called in to go to a meeting. And she said, we're going to start this new curriculum this year. And I was like, I've never heard of this. I had never heard of the science of reading. If I had heard of it, I didn't truly understand what it was. So getting that first bit to look at, I was like, this looks like a script. It took a long time for me to realize that this is not a script, it's a guide. And, of course, I came from the whole guided reading and small groups and stations. And I am somebody that I do not like change. I will be the first to admit I am very set in my ways, and I'm just a very structured person. And so, starting out, I tried to take well, I can use this worksheet as a station. I can use this as a station and try to do this. And finally, I just realized this is not going to work. And I think Robin said every meeting probably 100 times the word fidelity. That was one word that we just heard over and over. And I don't really know exactly when that clicked, but I finally realized, I think it was close to Christmas time when I realized how this program was working for our students. That's when because at first I was like, this material and content is too hard for first grade. They're never going to be able to do any of this. This is ridiculous. I am not, and my mind was changed probably by December. And that's when I realized I really do need to follow exactly what it says. I need to stick, of course, there are opportunities to do things with small groups, but the majority of it is whole group. So, just trying to wrap my head around how I'd never seen anything like this before, and I was used to having to supplement because, other curriculums, they don't meet the needs of all of your students. So, you've got tier 1 doing one thing, tier 3 doing something else, and you're constantly having to differentiate. I don't have to do that with core knowledge, except for when it comes to RTI. All of my kids are doing exactly what they need to be doing, and it's providing equity for all of my students.
I'm so glad you said that word because that's what it's all about, right? And I saw Shyla laughing at your comment about no way my first graders can really do this. And I felt the same way. And I now like your social media posts, you post so much about what they're capable of and equity.
I try to.
Yeah. And that's
a little different, but.
Yeah. And it's amazing. And it's so inspiring. And so you guys started out with that free open resource. Shyla, you're from Caddo Parish, right down the road from me. And I know that you guys actually implemented second edition. So thankfully, second edition is a lot more aesthetically appealing, way more digital resources. And so if you don't mind sharing how how Caddo actually implemented CKLA or what you guys were doing before and kind of how you guys made that shift, we'd love to hear from you.
In Caddo Parish, we first implemented CKLA, our K2 curriculum specialist made it mandatory that most or all teachers get trained in Foley. So Foley was kind of laying the foundation for us with the science of reading and how the reading brain works. And then they brought about the implementation of CKLA. Before CKLA, we were using Wonders, which is more guided reading and everything. And I think with guided readings, it appears that the students are more successful, but with CKLA, you can actually see that they truly understand. They have the phonemic awareness, they have the phonological awareness, and it was not easy to implement at first for me because I'm one of the teachers that I really like the cutesy, fluffy type things. And I just had to learn, no more fluff, just the stuff. And CKLA provides just the stuff that they need. And I struggled with implementing it because of the lesson pacing and structure. For example, when we have to say app, my kids would say can, dog, pat, and I'm thinking, guys, this stuff, because with Wonders, they could memorize those words, but with CKLA, they are truly learning it and truly learning how our language works. And so it was kind of hard at first with the teachers. We got a little bit of pushback, but now I think across our district, more teachers are becoming more acclimated to it, and we're all falling in love with it.
So Shyla, I want to come back to something you said, and I saw Brittany shaking her head too. Everybody's chiming in here with their verbal or their nonverbal movements. You talked about, well, everyone's talked about, my kids might not have been able to do this, or we looked at it like, oh, and we hear that a lot. We hear that, because Megan and I have both been in the professional development realm, and sometimes we're greeted with immediately, our kids can't do this. And Megan and I know that isn't true. So I guess one thing I'd love to come back to too now is the data, because your kids are obviously doing it. And so how did you move from our kids can't do this to having success in the classroom? And maybe we'll start with Brittany on that one, because I know you've shared some data with me before. So I'd love to hear from everyone on that in terms of how your kids have risen to the occasion.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share, Karen. Thank you. So yeah, as I shared, we have a pretty high district-wide free and reduced lunch rate and EL population. Now, of course, that varies quite a bit across our district as well. But I will tell you that the data spoke for itself for us when we did our pilot. When it came to the point where we were about to make the decision about whether or not we were going to adopt CKLA, I actually shared some data from other school districts who had really, taken the initiative to implement the science of teaching reading. And I really wanted to challenge our teachers around our beliefs about our students, right? And ask them, what percentage of kids do you think are capable of learning to read on grade level by the end of first grade? And we went through this process. Well, then I shared this data of these school districts, who are at like 90%, 95%. We know the science tells us that, 95% of our kids are really cognitively capable of learning to read on grade level. And I shared our own district data. And in that meeting, one of the teachers said, for the first time, like, I sincerely believe this is possible. Like, I see that, like, we could do this. Like, our district could actually achieve this. Our students, like, we could say 95% of our kids are going to read on grade level. Sorry, I'm a little emotional, but it was such a powerful moment in that meeting because our teachers, like, sincerely believe this at this point, and that's going to change everything for our kids. And it's not even just that data, it's the day-to-day data, right? Like, I'm sure the teachers on this call can speak to that. My teachers were constantly impressed that their kids showed up every day, right? Like, it was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe what my students are doing. I never would have thought that our kids could do this. So it's been an amazing experience.
Sorry, I'm muted. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Other people in their reactions with their students, we might even want to get into reactions from parents, because I think caregivers, we've had wonderful reactions in that regards as well.
Well, and one thing about data, Robin, you share a lot of data on social media. And so I'd love to hear from you as another, district administrator, what you guys noticed maybe in year one versus where you are now, and kind of COVID threw everybody for a loop there and you didn't have your spring data to share. But also, I'd love to hear that from your district as a whole, because I know that you've shared some things with that.
The two pieces, the best picture of data for me was the qualitative piece. So the quantitative has to follow. But just to give you a quick scenario, I was so basically we're a rural, very white, low wealth community. So I have kids who ride the bus 90 minutes to and from school each way, so in one community. So all that to say, I was in a school that's about 70% poverty, and I had a child who knows no diversity, but she was bringing together conversation about brown girl dreaming and the civil rights movement and what that child faced in her journey, and King Arthur's court. And so she talked about, wow, I love that King Arthur had a round table to promote equity, and isn't that something we could apply to, to people of color who fight these same battles, and they're craving equity and deserve equity. So for my child who never would have known diversity, qualitatively, that is so much value added. Like, I have chill bumps thinking about, we're hopefully building better people for this, the next journey of our world. Quantitatively, we knew K2, that's where we began. So we knew it would take a little bit of time, but our RTI data showed immediately that we were moving children out of at risk and above and beyond the 75th percentile. So after 3 years of implementation, we went from 0 to 5 reward schools, which is showing gains. We moved from an overall of a level 1 in our district in literacy to a level 4 on a scale of 5. We have nowhere near arrived. We're talking about moving the bar like 6% proficiency each year, but that's 6% more of our children who are gaining. And what you don't see the picture of when you look at proficiency, we moved 20% in 3 years, we moved 20% of our students with special needs from below into approaching or on track. So you can't see that in the on track and master data, but we can show you how many children that we're trying to move the needle no matter where they are. And that's what high quality tier 1 instruction will do. So again, we're moving the children at all ends, all levels of the quintiles, and to move children into that 75th to 100th percentile band shows you not only equity, but you're meeting the needs of every learner. You're probably going to have to like pull the hook and get me out of here, because like I'm like the other panelists, I'm so passionate about this work.
That's a great point. If you can't tell on the call, if you're a participant and you can't tell that we're all sitting here nodding, smiling from ear to ear, I've gotten goosebumps twice while hearing about Brittany and Robin's experience, because we all are so passionate. And so I'm so glad you brought that up. Also, I love that you shared both the qualitative and quantitative data. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Karen, let's move on to your question.
Well, so I have another question kind of related to this, and maybe for the teachers too, because we get the question from prospective CKLA adopters. What about these topics of instruction? My kids might not be interested in that. And those just seem like, where did you come up with these? So I think from the teacher's perspective and the administrator's perspective, because they get to see across the board, what would you say to someone who's questioning the topics that are selected for the students to learn? So Shyla, do you want to start with that one?
Oh, will. At first, I was one of the teachers saying, my children will not understand the Mayans, the Incans, the Aztecs. And that is one, actually, we're in that domain now. My students, they love it. You cannot underestimate what they will have interest in. And I do not feel that you need to pull in any supplemental listening resources or anything. If you pull in the pictures and ask the questions, the students are then coming to you the next day. Ms. Johnson, when are we going to read about the Mayans? What happened? Did they take it over? So it starts off slow. In my very first year, and I'm just going to make an honest, statement here. I had to keep myself from yawning because I wasn't so used to just sitting there reading, and my kids were squirming. But as I learned how to engage them and spark their interest and build it up for the next day, then they really were asking me, when are we going to do knowledge? Is it knowledge time? When are we going to do knowledge? I think they like knowledge way more than skills, honestly.
Correct. Or no, we don't want to go to recess. Can you finish the read aloud? I mean, like, that's a real thing as well. So Liza, how about you?
I've noticed the same thing. And I think that a lot of it, kind of to piggyback off what Shyla said, is how you deliver it and understanding the content. And I know at that first year, I don't know if I necessarily read it how I was supposed to. I think I read what I wanted to and not everything. And now I've realized, it's really important to look at all of the pieces to really become familiar. And, science and social studies, I teach only the knowledge strand now. I did teach both when we first started, but now we're departmentalized, so I'm doing only the knowledge. But I love science and social studies and writing, so I'm so passionate about that anyway. And I can tell now when I'm teaching that I'm more engaged, and therefore my students are engaged, and making that connection with them. And I love, we're getting ready to start Domain 5, Early American Civilizations, tomorrow. And I've included, my husband and I love to travel, and I love to share those experiences with my kids. And for so many of these domains, I try to tie it in, because we're, like Robin had said, we're in a small rural area. A lot of these kids, Dollywood is close to us. A lot of these kids have never even been to Dollywood. They don't get those experiences. And so I love sharing those with them and making my personal connections to these things and giving it to these children. So that way, one day maybe they'll get to have those same experiences also.
That's great to bring that up, because equity of access to all of this content, that's a big point for us, that all of our students deserve access to this wonderful, rich content. And sometimes when we look at those topics, we think, and what we've shared today is, oh, my kids can't do this. All kids can do that, and we've seen that. And you bring up another great point about your engagement really makes a difference for their engagement. And so thank you very much for sharing that.
Well, and we talked about, we just finished domain 4, which was early world civilizations. And, that we talked about the Mesopotamians and Egyptians. And, I told them every day when we did things, I said, their culture is very different than ours. And I said, you do not have to agree with what they believe in. We all believe in different things. But I said, it's important that you have an understanding of other people's culture. So you're able to have discussions, at some point. And they were so mature through that whole day, all the points that the conversations that they have with each other. Sometimes you just have to step back and just let them talk. And it is amazing the conversations that these students have and what they build, and what they make connections to. It's amazing.
How did that transfer into writing? Because we're building wonderful conversationalists. Students are talking about topics that without CKLA, they probably wouldn't even know existed in the world. And now they're having sophisticated conversations. They're excited to speak with their peers and take this information home. But how did that transform the writing? So if whoever wants to speak about this, that is something that I always love hearing about. I know, Liza, you shared some of your students' writing, so I'm going to go back to you.
I love writing, so I don't care. I was going to let somebody else speak if they wanted to, but I especially love with Amplify, where we're using it this year, that a lot more of the writing is embedded into it. A lot of the writing prompts that are provided, it'll say students may or may not be able to dictate a sentence. I don't tell them you only have one sentence to write. I just let them write. And I think that that's been the greatest thing, because it really challenges my tier 1 students and even my tier 3 students and tier 2 students. But my, tier 1s, they're writing paragraphs, and they were never doing that before. And they're taking the skills piece and applying that to their writing. Like we talk about how make sure you're segmenting the sounds and you're listening for those sounds as you're spelling these words. This is a tricky word, so it's not going to follow the rules. Make sure that you're doing this too. And, we talk about sequencing with our, having your beginning and your middle and your end, and really thinking it out. We plan it out first through pictures. And, I'll say you have 2 minutes to draw what happened in the beginning, and you're going to do that. So, a lot of it's informative. Sometimes it's a personal narrative, like it's all opinions. We do Venn diagrams and compare and contrast. We were never doing that before. Like, it is amazing what these students do with writing and taking what they've learned, and they can share with other students in the class what they've written. They love doing that too. And I've noticed too with them, reading their stories orally, they catch mistakes. And so that's how we now edit our writing, is by them reading it out loud. Sometimes they're sitting there by themselves reading it out loud to themselves, and I just see erasers going. Like, the whole process just blows my mind.
Thank you. Shyla, do you have anything to add about writing?
Well, my students come to me with huge deficits, so we aren't quite at the writing paragraphs yet, but getting them to write one sentence about what we read in knowledge. The words that they want to use are words that they can't spell, but being that it's transferred into their oral vocabulary just amazes me. Like, you want to write that word, Yucatan Peninsula. Like, how do you spell peninsula? They're using those. So just the oral vocabulary that they're trying to write. We may not be quite at paragraphs yet, but getting me a good sentence, it shocks me, and I'm amazed every time.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. I think I'd love to kind of switch gears to talk about the science of reading and the journey that you've taken, and maybe how you overcame any challenges that districts may face as they are on this journey for themselves. So maybe we start with Robin and Brittany from an administrative perspective, and the teachers thinking about how did colleagues, how did we bring colleagues on board who may not have been at the same place we were? So, Robin, you want to start with that one?
Sure. So as we taught science of reading paired with the strong foundational curriculum that we had, we took it in chunks. So we would, we just built like the main two pieces of research. Scarborough's wrote knowledge building and foundational skills instruction. We started there. Then we said, oh yeah, like I think Brittany talked about, the curriculum has exactly what science of reading says it should have. And so then we had to go out and dabble and have a no shame zone and just implement it, and then talk about problems of practice and come back. And then we would lesson and unit prep, and we would go out and then we'd come back. So I listened to the teachers' voices, but the PD is exactly half of the battle. Like if you don't have the HQIM in place, you're sunk. But if you don't have the spiraled PD that's totally grounded in that curriculum, you're sunk. So the perfect blend of being real, having a no shame zone, trying it, being transparent, feeling safe, and then coming in and spiraling, constantly learning more as we went, was the key to a lot of our success in our work. And we are still very much a work in progress. I always say that every time I'm speaking.
I love the being real. And I think, and Brittany, as we share the challenges you overcame and how you addressed it, I think the being real and the no shame zone, I think our next question will go towards remote instruction and how are we addressing those challenges as well. So Brittany, if you want to talk about the challenges and even then lead into the remote instruction, that would be great.
Yeah, so we our approach was very similar to Robin's, right? We definitely started with that professional development. I knew the professional development was going to be huge. And that really came from, honestly, my dissertation research. I had started kind of digging into research in university prep and teacher preparation. And when we started talking to our teachers about this professional learning and the science of teaching and reading, I mean, I just said, here's the deal, like 29% of universities adequately prepare teachers for teaching reading. So the likelihood is, even if you have a master's degree in reading or you're getting your reading specialist degree, chances are you don't know about this stuff, right? And so we really started there and just kind of had that no shame zone, right? Like we have stuff to learn and that's okay. And we're going to continue to learn and we're going to continue to grow. And then, I mean, it really was just kind of like the perfect storm, right? When teachers learn about these things and they realize like, they go through this like emotional kind of journey with this, right? And I think that that's something to be so sensitive to. They feel regret and they feel guilt and they feel sad and shame, right? For the things that they did before changing their instruction. And we have to be really sensitive to that. Like we have to understand that our teachers are feeling these really real, raw feelings about, I don't want to say damage, but kind of like damage that could have potentially been done to students, right? And so it really was a matter of creating that safe space. And once they had that knowledge paired with like these materials, and I think Shila's talked about it a lot, like I don't have to go looking for other stuff. That is something our teachers have said over and over and over again. Like I have everything I need, which made their jobs easier too, right? So like I feel confident. I cannot tell you how many teachers told me that. Like, I feel so much more confident about teaching reading now. I love teaching reading now. This is like, I used to hate this. My kids used to hate it. Now my kids love it. We just have had all of these really positive shifts, which is amazing. It's wonderful, right? But we've also gone through like these really like emotional responses as well. And so I think it's really important as leaders, supporting teachers through this movement, recognizing and acknowledging that, especially if they're teachers who invested a lot of time and money into master's preparation, right? It's really frustrating for them to find out that they didn't learn anything about the science of teaching reading through those master's preparation programs. So I hope I covered that question, Karen.
You definitely did. And I think we've hit on a lot of things that will help others who are thinking about moving and shifting to that high quality instructional materials that are going to require their teachers to kind of question themselves at times. I'd love to hear, we have a few questions in the chat, but I'd love to hit on remote because I know our partners are thinking about remote instruction, and even a question came in about that. And just to hear how you're embracing that, what your thoughts are related to how your teachers and students are doing with that, with CKLA. And that's for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of start. So our district, we have kind of like a hybrid model going on right now. So we do, we have face-to-face instruction happening in all of our buildings, but we did offer virtual learning opportunities for families who didn't feel comfortable sending their students to school. So we do have a virtual school running right now. And we have kindergartners through 12th graders participating in that virtual school. And I mean, it's definitely been a challenge, right? I mean, it's like our teachers have really struggled with, you know, how do I teach this in a virtual environment? You know, how do I keep kids engaged? But they've really risen to the challenge. They've, you know, adapted. You know, a lot of places are, you know, sharing some different virtual literacy tools, early literacy tools that they're kind of bringing in and layering in to help with that instruction. And so, you know, it's going pretty well. We've done some similar things too that, like Robin had shared. You know, we're fortunate that we have curriculum task force that works over the summers. And so we have already even developed just some PowerPoints and things like that for our teachers to already use this year. When we rolled out CKLA to our teachers. So, but one of the things I do have to commend Amplify for is just all of the support that they offer for remote instruction, right? Like the foundational skills boost lessons was just a game changer. Like our teachers were so happy and so excited to have those. You know, the recorded read alouds, and I mean, just all of the things that Amplify has done to support teachers in this situation, I think is just huge. It's monumental. And other companies are not doing those kinds of things for educators. And I think that just speaks volumes about Amplify as a company in general.
Well, thank you. And I have a shout out to Shyla, because Shyla actually participated in one of our first office hours earlier this year to support teachers in what it looks like to do this remotely. So Shyla, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I would love to add to that. In March, when schools first shut down, my partner teacher and I got together, and we knew that phonemic awareness should not be shown on the screen. So the biggest thing was, let's get our stuff to our teachers in our district before they go to teacher, pay teacher, and everywhere else. And I feel like CKLA really leans itself to virtual instruction easily. I teach face-to-face and virtual students at the same time. And I love having the hub. I'll say, okay, take out your Fables reader. And my friends in class are pulling out their actual books, and my friends at home automatically know, let me go to the hub and open up the Fables reader. I love, love, love the way you guys have done things remotely. We also have the knowledge videos embedded. So because I'm teaching live virtual at the same time, my students that do not sign on, I can just upload the video. Hey, go watch this video, and then watch our live Zoom recording to go along with it to see the application portion of it. I love teaching both virtually and face-to-face. And I feel like CKLA, the layout of the program and the online resources just makes it 100% easier for me.
Great.
That's a really good point. Like, here you have this science of the research being put into action through instruction. And we're also giving you the space to not only be flexible with that, you know, to reach all learners, whether they're at home or in your classroom, but we're giving teachers the space, the opportunity to bring their creativity to what they're doing as well. And we've kind of heard that throughout the conversation today. And that's something that is so important. And we always share with teachers, like, look, don't judge CKLA by the black and white pages in the teacher's guides, because this is your science-based instruction. You no longer have to search for these high quality resources, and you get to bring your art, your creativity, your engagement strategies, what works for you and your students to this program to really make it come to life. And you just shared how you did that with virtual learning as well, and how those materials actually supported you in that process. There was a question that came in that I want to make sure we go back to. I think this is a really valuable question. Brittany, you talked about the guilt behind like teachers and how they used to teach. And there's almost like a part of you that's like, oh my goodness, I've been doing what isn't best for kids, right? And that's a hard reality. And it is a very emotional reality. But how do you help those, or how did you kind of move those teachers along who, when you guys did start professionally developing your teachers to come to learn about the science of teaching reading, how did you guys really help those resistors move forward in that process? Brittany, I'm gonna ask you that.
Okay, sorry. I will tell you that I think a lot of our success in our district had to do with really just getting that coalition of the willing, right? So I started with my instructional coaches, and because I had one in every building, and then they were kind of the people who went out to their buildings, and they're consistent touch points for our teachers, right? And so they're constantly having conversations with their teachers about this, and and so many of our instructional coaches are so highly respected because they teach college courses and things like that. And so it started with them, and then it's just literally grown from them, right? So it was them, and then the professional development really started with our K1 teachers, and we had really great participation amongst our K1 teachers, and the professional learning, again, paired with like piloting CKLA and just the success of our students of CKLA, it just it honestly just snowballed like rapidly, right? And then, people were just like, I want to do this. Like, I want in on this. Like, I'm really excited about this. And so, I actually feel really good. Like, I don't know that we have a ton of resistors, to be totally honest with you. And I think a lot of that has to do with the strategy, right? Of really kind of building that coalition of people who are really working alongside you to move the work forward.
Yeah, thank you. Robin, do you have anything to add to that about resistors and how you helped that process or help move them along in this process to implementing second edition, especially?
Totally agree with Brittany. The power is in building the capacity of your teachers. So building the capacity of those 24 to then go back out and share their passion and share the results. And then also district and building level leaders need to honor the struggle, but then champion teachers. So like, I'm going to push them, but then I'm going to lift them up and elevate them and celebrate them because they're the ones doing the work. So celebrating those types of stories that I shared qualitatively in, earlier, and just letting them know that you're behind them and you're with them and you're learning alongside them, and that it's a vertical problem. So, beginning with me, and I shamed myself also about teaching reading because I used to have phonics rap CDs that y'all probably don't even know what CDs are, like the young people, but phonics rap CDs and like Dollar Tree workbooks. And the girl who I taught how to read is like filling my prescriptions right now at CVS. So like, it's a wonder I'm even alive because I cheated her. So all that to say, know better, do better. And I've never advocated for curriculum before in my life, but if I didn't believe in this and that it's what's best for kids, I wouldn't be here. So just so everyone knows, there's no ulterior motive in anyone that's on this panel. I don't know why I said that, but just FYI.
No, thank you for sharing that, actually. And also, it's a real statement in that you guys have the data to back it up.
Right.
And so here we are talking about the science of reading and professionally developing teachers, building teacher capacity about the latest literacy research on, how to teach reading and all of those things. But the beauty in what you guys are sharing is that you not only developed your teachers, you put high quality instructional materials in their hands and saw, like you said, this snowball effect of building teacher capacity plus student results. And that's the win, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here because we really do Amplify really takes very seriously closing the knowledge gap that exists amongst educators. And so we actually have a plethora of resources that you guys who are struggling to move your teachers along in this process can use. But first, what we're going to do is share this free pilot for Amplify Reading. And so if you'd like, maybe we can have someone drop that in the chat to try Amplify Reading. Amplify Reading is our digital adaptive student-driven practice program that aligns to, grounded in the science of reading and aligns to CKLA's instruction. And something else, and Karen, I'll let you talk about this exciting piece.
So we have another exciting piece. And one of the things we didn't get to, I know I mentioned at the beginning of the call that because I know we had a wonderful story about the connection with our M-Class tools and our AR, Amplify Reading, and CKLA, but there is the opportunity to try M-Class, which if you're familiar with Dibbles Next or Dibbles 8th edition, at MOY. So to do a benchmark assessment for the middle of the year, and to use the tools that are available for instructional grouping and instruction that is tied to that. And I don't know if Brittany may be able to just squeeze in how that has made an impact on her district because of the tools that are all working in alignment. And I think that's one thing that we really see a huge impact when we do see that happen. So Brittany, I don't know if you want to add while we're going through quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So our district uses Dibbles M-Class along with CKLA. And honestly, M-Class has just been a game changer for us this year. It has really kind of leveled the playing field as far as response to intervention and reading goes. Our buildings are just at very different places in terms of their knowledge and ability to implement interventions in reading. And so M-Class has just made it really easy for our teachers, right? We did the benchmarking in the fall, and M-Class groups our students for us into instructional groups and then gives recommendations for intervention. And when I say recommendations for intervention, I mean, it's literally the intervention. Like you just print it and go for it. So our teachers have been super excited about it. They were thrilled that they had data, and then the next day they could have their groups together. They were providing intervention for their groups. This is probably the first year that that's ever happened. Like we didn't have like data, and then we were spending extra weeks collecting even more diagnostic data to help figure out how we were going to target intervention. And our progress monitoring data is really amazing. Our kids are making awesome growth. I shared earlier, like we have some students who, are already at middle of the year benchmark, and we've got quite a few weeks to go before we're actually going to do middle of the year benchmarking. And so our teachers have just sung the praises of M-Class Dibbles. They were a little hesitant to do Dibbles again, because we did Dibbles before in our district, but it's been amazing. They also love the connection to CKLA. So the M-Class system has what they call CKLA Connect, and it will tell them where they can go within the assessment remediation guides in addition to the Dibbles interventions to intervene for their students. So
thank you for sharing that. And
that's awesome. Yeah.
And so people can try that. So if people want to just get a taste, that link has been shared in the chat for you.
Absolutely.
And I should add, sorry, if you don't mind, Megan, the awesome thing about the system too is it's constantly feeding off of the data. And so as our teachers are progress monitoring, it's updating student recommendations and it's helping them shift intervention quickly and in the moment. So we're propelling reading achievement for our students too.
Great.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so, but going back to those resistors, how do we build capacity? How do we really close that knowledge gap? Amplify has done tremendous work and is going to, and still, wants to be that that leader in this process. And so we actually have an upcoming webinar. Susan Lambert will be hosting it. And it's going to take back another, another layer of that science of reading, that 4-part processing model for word recognition. So you actually get to understand how to apply the simple view of reading and get some tips on how to implement change. So this is the perfect opportunity for you to join in. And then if you aren't already a member of our podcast, we would love for you to join. This is, I'm not sure if you ladies are members or not, but our Science of Reading podcast gives you an opportunity to hear from researchers, from the, practitioners to, cognitive scientists, and really understand what the science of reading is. It's product agnostic. It's just really to help teachers and educators across the country build capacity. And lots of great resources on our literacy hub as well. And if you Google Amplify Literacy Hub, you'll see a plethora of ready to go resources that really help you engage your teachers with equity, remote learning, assessment, and many important topics. And Karen, I'll let you invite our members to this.
Well, please join us on our Facebook group to really talk about the science of reading, not necessarily products, but really just talking about what's out there, what's happening, the discussion. So please join us because there's great conversation happening across K to 12. I think you're going to see educators, and someone asked that question also, across grade levels, not just in our elementary setting, because it does apply to all.
Absolutely. And if you'd like to know more or learn more about Amplify CKLA, you can check out amplify.com/CKLA. And it looks like, and we'd love to get back to you to share more about our core instruction program, but we are at time. We're actually a little over. This has been a phenomenal conversation. I'm honored to be with all of the educators on this call who have just shared their CKLA journey, who are just, so committed to doing what's absolutely best for kids and doing it in an equitable way, and also putting high quality instructional materials in both teachers and students' hands. And so we do want to thank you for joining. And Karen, is there anything else?
Yeah, if you would go back to that slide with the CKLA.amplify, there you go, or amplify.c. If we didn't answer your question today, I know there were some questions that did not get answered. So please send them. We will be happy to follow up with you. We are sorry that we didn't get to every question and answer. We thank our panelists so much for their expertise and their experiences. We are so honored and humbled that you would be willing to share your day with us and share your ideas with the rest of the listeners. So we thank you so much. And I think that's where we are.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. And we'll go ahead and sign off.